Guys, it's good to be back with you. Been out a few days for a conference, and Coco and I are happy to be back on the drive. So since it's Friday, I thought we would talk about a very weighty matter, tongue-in-cheek there. How do you guys feel about the exclamation point? This has come to my mind lately because I will realize, being a little bit of a grammar nerd myself, by the time I've written an email, but usually a text, I will realize how many sentences in a row I have at least one exclamation point at the end of. Sometimes multiple exclamation points, sometimes 4 sentences in a row. So I start to ask myself, have we become a nation of yellers, or are we screaming? What are we doing with these exclamation points? So in our new house, Netflix is one of the easiest things to watch while we learn how to use direct TV, because I've been a dish TV person, and now if you've got direct TV, everything's different. So I've been going over to Netflix, and in going over to Netflix, I found this really cool little Netflix series called Explained, and they explain things from I'm just drawing a blank, anything you can think of, literally, from the creation of man to literally the use of the exclamation point. And so I thought this would be really interesting to watch. So I watched this one, and they were talking about how, by definition, an exclamation point is supposed to be used at the end of an exclamation, such as whoa, wow, sheesh, bam, kind of almost like the Marvel Comics kind of things. And over time, we've gotten to where, they would interview several people, and some of them would be like, oh, I never use them, I loathe them, they should be used so sparingly. And yet, I think things are changing with communication, because whereas in formal writing, if I'm writing an article, if I were writing a book, I would not put tons of exclamation points. But I want to know how many of you can't help but think, whenever you're writing, particularly a text, if you don't put an exclamation point, you don't seem happy or friendly or excited. If someone asks you, would you like to go grab a cup of coffee, and you write yes, either with a period, or, as we know, most likely with no punctuation on texts, it doesn't look very excited, does it? But if you put yes, and with 1 or 2 exclamation points, the whole feeling being conveyed there is completely different. I laugh because this apparently conversation, if you think about it, it's been going on, 30 years? Because if any of you are Seinfeld fans like I am, you remember the episode where Elaine really basically broke up with Joe Jarmel, somebody Jarmel, that she was dating at the time, because he had left her a note and said Mary had the baby. And she looked at this, she goes, Mary had the baby. Why didn't you use an exclamation point? And he goes, I didn't feel it needed one. She goes, a baby didn't need an exclamation point? And they literally 30 years ago had a breakup over this issue. So I remember at one point she was an editor, a copy editor on the series. So she was going in there, and her editor called her in and goes, why so many exclamation points? Because at that point she was, I think, kind of trying to get back at Jarmel. So he goes, and I put on my sweater! Exclamation point. So I was just curious if any of you have a thought about that. What was it called? Interrobang, that's the word, Interrobang, they came up with, which they said they tried to have come up like in the 60s or 70s, never really took off, but it was literally a question mark and an exclamation point mixed together in one piece, which never really took off as a keyboard item. But let's face it, how many of us use it? I use it all the time. Like, what? It'll be question mark, exclamation point, question mark, right? Because we're conveying a lot of emotion. We're not just putting question mark, because that'd be kind of like, what? But with an exclamation point, it's very excited and questioning at the same time. So I'm curious to hear your little grammar philosophies on these things, and how many of you loathe exclamation points, how many of you can't live without exclamation points. I feel like I would sound far too mean in my text if I didn't have exclamation points. It's kind of like, I remember my daughter Savannah, when I noticed she first started working at the real estate office, I would hear her in the other room doing this kind of vocally, because I would hear her in the other room going, hello, this is Savannah. When are you going to be able to bring our carpet over? Not carpet, she didn't want carpet. Fix our tile, or put in our granite. So I was like, why does your voice go up like 2 octaves when you're on the telephone? And I remember it was so funny. She goes, so I don't sound so mean. I'm afraid I sound mean on the phone. She goes, I know I have a real blunt way. I don't sound mean. And I thought that was just very clever and very self-aware, that sometimes with our inflections we can sound very demanding, versus if we put a certain tone or an exclamation point, if it's in writing, it changes the tenor of our conversation. So anyway, curious if you guys have any thoughts on this, any things that you guys use. Of course, there's always the ever popular emoji to make things look and feel friendlier and homier, which I know we all use, and I think it's a good thing, not a bad thing. So let me know your thoughts, and so good to be back with you. See you soon.